It's here, in the Holy Land, that the story of Jews, Christians and Muslims begins. And it's here too that the story of an unusual friendship begins. A friendship between two women, Fatima and Sumaya, one a Muslim, the other a Christian. Tekoa on the edge of the Judean desert. The prophet Amos lived here 750 years before the birth of Christ. Amos fiercely criticized the social injustice and religious hypocrisy in the state of Israel to the north. But it wasn't long before he fell out of favor with the Israelites. They'd had enough of his admonitions and dispatched him back to his home region, where he lived on this mountain. Since then, it has been known as Mount Amos. In 1960, Mohammed Salim Doueb, Fatima's father, built a splendid property on this very spot. Fatima was his firstborn child. She was followed by 7 other daughters and 6 sons. After his death in 1979, the estate fell into decline. It was plundered and damaged. During the first Intifada, children hurled stones from here at Israeli cars. In reprisal, the Israeli army flattened the remaining buildings with bulldozers. First in Arabic and then in German, Fatima welcomes us to Tekoa. Fatima's ancestors were all Bedouins. But for thousands of years, sedentary fellahs have also lived here. Farmers who have to battle just as hard to survive in this barren region. In 1948, the year the State of Israel was established, Sumaya was born into a fellahin family from the region north of Ramallah. Today, Sumaya Fahat Nasser is a lecturer at the Palestinian University of Bir Zayt. A Palestinian Christian, she attended the Protestant school of Talitha Kumi in Beit Jala, where she obtained her school leaving certificate. Her time with the deaconesses from the Kaiserswerther Anstalten had a deep impact on her. During her time at the school, she developed a close friendship with a Muslim girl, which, despite all the vagaries of fate, still thrives today. Her friendship with Fatima.
I grew up in Talitha Kumi and went to school there. It was a boarding school for girls. There were around 400 of us, Muslims and Christians. We all lived together in one building. We always felt like sisters.
They learned a great deal from the deaconesses: order, discipline, singing, needlework and cleanliness, as well as devotion, love, trust and loyalty. At the school, there were also 8 Bedouin girls from one family.
One of them was Fatima. Fatima was my friend. We had so much fun together. We play-acted, we sang, we messed around. She was very bright, very clever. We loved her.
Fatima's father, a devout Muslim, wanted his daughters to have the same education he had enjoyed at a Lutheran school. An education that embraced knowledge of the world, respect for other religions, tolerance towards other ways of life. So he sent them all to a Christian girls' school, Talitha Kumi. And because Fatima sang German songs and recited verses from the Bible for years after leaving school, she still remembers what she learnt.
In Talitha Kumi, we had to speak English 3 days a week, German on 3 days, and Arabic on 1 day. But I always spoke German for 6 days. I always liked speaking the language. I learned German very quickly and was really good at it. I can recite whole passages from the Bible in German even today.
When she was just 16, Fatima experienced the first major disappointment of her young life. Her father took a decision that can be understood only by someone who accepts the strict customs of the Bedouins.
She went home one weekend and later we heard her father had married her off. When she got home, she found she was already engaged, along with her sister, Hafisa. We were all so sad. And so was she. We all cried with her. It was terrible.
Fatima's dream of studying medicine in Heidelberg was shattered. She was married to a cousin once removed and had 3 daughters and a son with him. Her father had to abide by the prevailing customs so as not to endanger his position, because having a daughter of 16 who wasn't married was regarded as a disgrace. Fatima was unable to keep in touch with Sumaya because, as a Bedouin wife, she was not allowed to leave the tribe on her own. In her youth too, Sumaya had to obey strict family rules. But with the help of the school and through her own persistence and smartness, she was able to tread her own path much better. She passed her school leaving examination in 1956 and went on to study biology, geology and education in Germany. In Hamburg, she obtained her doctorate along with Munir, her husband, whom she'd got to know there, and who is also a Palestinian. Back in Palestine, they both became lecturers at Birzeit University. Besides teaching, Sumaya also played a role in the peace movement, becoming involved in anti-violence projects. In particular, she seeks to reconcile contradictory interests in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. A cosmopolitan figure, Sumaya is a successful author and awareness shaper, and above all, she's a Palestinian. Despite all her activities, Sumaya never forgot the friend from her school days. She began to search for her, and with the help of a shepherd boy, finally found her near her father's house on the edge of the desert.
She was in the middle of a field, coming towards us. The boy shouted out, "Fatima, over here! Your friend's here!" "But I haven't got a friend," she replied. "I haven't had a friend for a long time. Where would I suddenly find one?" But the closer she got, the more it dawned on her. We recognized each other and embraced. We laughed and we cried. We kissed each other. I was so moved and thought, she hasn't changed.
Fatima's life was hard and full of privation. But thanks to what she had learned at Talitha and with the help of her school friend, she overcame many of the problems that fate had confronted her with. And their old school now gives them the chance to pass on their experiences to the next generation, which they hope will be able to build up a democratic Palestinian state.
She wasn't allowed to finish school, but through the lessons of life, through her courage and strength, Fatima will be able to tell us a lot, especially about Talitha.
Talitha is where it all began. My name is Fatima Dweb. I come from Za'atara. I'm known as Majdolin, Majdolin's mother. My grandfather was a Bedouin. He lived in the desert in Ta'amra, which extends from Beit Sahor to the Dead Sea. All my ancestors were Bedouins. Most, if not all of you, will have heard the name Ta'amra. My grandparents lived in goat hair tents and kept sheep. My grandfather was the sheikh of the Bedouins. He married 3 women. The third of them was my grandmother. He was nearly 90 years old when they wed. At the time, my grandmother was 25. I'm certain you know that such things happen in our society, although perhaps not in yours.
The old sheikh, her grandfather, Fatima says, sired a son with the young woman. He was to become Fatima's father. But after the child was born, the sheikh died, and the tribe wanted his widow to marry a cousin. But she refused. At the time, this was simply outrageous. In great danger, she fled through the desert towards Bethlehem and found refuge in the Lutheran school at Beit Sahur. Her pursuers respected the cross on the church tower. The young woman and her child were safe within the walls of the school.
Whenever our Bedouin relations came to Beit Sahur, the town where the weekly market was held, grandmother took them in and looked after them. She gave food and lodging to anyone unable to find transport home in good time. This earned her respect. The family gradually changed its mind. It no longer put pressure on her to marry.
The key to the strength of women in Arab society can be seen in the behavior of Fatima's grandmother. She fought for her right to self-determination. But in doing so, she never denied her roots and never severed contact with the family. The grandmother and her son returned to the Bedouin tribe. She bought a tent and some sheep, and from that point on lived exactly like the others.
What do we learn from Fatima's grandmother, who was widowed at an early age, who was to have been married off again by the clan, but refused and fled into a school where she found work and kept her son with her? She had strength and the courage to tread her own path.
My grandmother was called Kadra, but they called her Kadra the Wise.
Wise man.
Through the influence of the deaconesses at the Lutheran school, Fatima's father had developed into a man with a strong sense of responsibility. Later he was chosen as the Bedouins' representative in the Jordanian parliament. He had a great influence on the Bedouin tribes. At the time Fatima was born in a goat hair tent, her father was already building his first permanent house. One after another was constructed, and many Bedouins became sedentary. He also built schools, separate facilities for boys and girls, as is customary in Palestine. Fatima is very proud of what her father achieved with regard to the education of his children. The schools are named after him, as are many streets and squares. His achievements are listed on many plaques. Talitha Kumi, little girl, arise. The words, according to St. Mark's Gospel, which Jesus spoke to the child who was thought to have died, became the motto of the patrons who set up a home for Arab orphans in Jerusalem in 1853. As time passed, the mission concept developed more and more into a support program for Arab girls which went far beyond teaching domestic skills. Education played an increasingly predominant role. Education as the most precious dowry a father could give his daughters on their journey through life. The consequences for Talitha of the two world wars in the Middle East were painful. Reconstruction of the school in Jerusalem was forbidden. But in 1961, the deaconesses found a new location, Beit Jala near Bethlehem. It was here that the new Talitha came into being. Talitha Kumi today is a modern, well-equipped school for 1,000 boys and girls from Christian and Muslim families in Bethlehem and the surrounding villages on the West Bank. Besides imparting sound knowledge, the school sees the respectful coexistence of the various religions as an important educational aim.
We have morning prayers, usually taken by me, by priests, by teachers of religion. On numerous occasions, we have joint morning prayers together with Mahmoud Salome, a Muslim teacher of religion. Or he takes morning prayers on his own. We discuss the content beforehand. The mutual cooperation is very good.
The general educational aim is for pupils to get to know and accept those from a different religious background and with a different view of life, and to do so without judgment or criticism. Some of the rifts in Palestinian society go extremely deep, and they involve not only politics but also religion. At one time, 60% of the population of Bethlehem was Christian, but many Christians have gone abroad. The catastrophic economic situation following Hamas's election victory, when the West suspended financial aid, nurtures envy and resentment. The spread of fundamentalist views amongst Muslims and Christians results time and again in fierce clashes, sometimes in naked violence. Against this background, Talitha Kumi plays a major role in combating ignorance. Its staff, together with their German head and Fatima and Sumaya, help to ensure that Christian and Muslim girls and boys retain their mutual respect.
The name Talitha Kumi comes from the words of Jesus. Talitha was the girl he saved, and Kumi means arise. Little girl, arise.
Fate presented Fatima with a massive task. After giving birth to healthy children, she had Magdalene. The child was born with a serious handicap. She was suffering from spina bifida. With intermarriage between close relatives standard here, this is a common phenomenon.
She was born with a large hole on her spine, and her legs were deformed. She was seriously disabled. The doctor in the hospital where I gave birth asked, "Who is Magdalene's mother?" He knew her name from the tag they always put on a baby's wrist. He sat down on my bed and sighed. Then he said, "Sadly, I have to tell you that you have given birth to a disabled child. I have never before seen a case like it, and I probably never will again."
At first, the Arab doctors gave Magdalene no chance of survival. But Fatima didn't give up. By supreme effort, and with the support of the German Organization for Disabled, she enabled her daughter to develop in humane circumstances. But Fatima didn't want to work in secret. However, she needed the family's blessing to obtain professional training. So at a major celebration, Sumaya's husband Munir appealed to those assembled.
He simply said, "We're so happy to be with you here today, and we would like to thank you for the wonderful way you look after the disabled. It says in the Quran that whoever takes in a disabled child and cares for it will immediately have a place in paradise." He then thanked them for allowing Fatima to take on her task and for giving her their blessing, because only with your blessing, he said, can this work be done. The men were immediately impressed, and so was her mother. There was no way they could say no, so they all nodded in agreement. That's how it went.
Und deshalb konnten sie nicht Nein sagen. Deshalb haben sie alle mit dem Kopf genickt und schon ist es gelaufen.
But society is still a long way from integrating the disabled into normal everyday life, which is what Fatima is striving for. The communal life in her sister Hafiza's family, which she supports, is still the exception.
My impression is that in Palestine, disabled children are kept hidden away at home. People are too embarrassed to show them in public. With our disabled child, we get some very strange looks in Palestine, nothing like the tremendous understanding you find in Germany. Disabled children here don't come out for weeks or months on end. People don't like to be seen with them.
Were she not called Dweb, a big name in this region, Fatima would find access to families with disabled children here in Za'atara or in Palestine as a whole extremely difficult. Here she's a social worker, nurse and advisor all in one. This boy couldn't walk, but now he's had surgery. If her father had left her at school, Fatima says, and she hadn't got married, his tribe would have been despised and his name erased. But now she bears his name, and it opens doors for her. As non-believers, and especially with a camera, she said, normally you would never have been allowed to set foot in here. Through her work, Fatima has overcome her sadness at having left school so early.
Even as a child, I dreamt of doing what I do now. But I thought that would never happen, driving a car and helping people, because it all seemed so out of reach.
But she's managed it, and particularly well in the case of her sister Hafiza, who has 5 seriously disabled children. Fatima has taught all the girls to learn and to work in order to earn a bit of money, because the state doesn't provide any funds for the disabled. Her sister is now able to bear her burden more easily. Jeans and other articles of clothing are sold in a discarded container that once belonged to the Israeli army. The profit is modest indeed, but in this way at least a few shekels are added to the housekeeping money. Afterwards, Fatima checks the bookkeeping. Majdulin, who at birth was given 6 months to live, has just passed her university exam in English. Fatima proudly calls herself Majdulin, Majdulin's mother. That's almost revolutionary, because here mothers are nearly always named after their firstborn son.
She decided that her daughters wouldn't marry anyone from within the family, no matter how old they got, even if they didn't marry at all. We must stop this disease, she said. Her 3 other daughters have all studied at Bethlehem University or at the University in Arab Jerusalem, and all 3 have married outside the family, even though they were already 28 or 29 years old. Today, that's almost normal in our society. But she was happy to show that a woman can find the right man who doesn't come from within her own family, even when she's 28 or 29.
Fatima is deeply rooted in her family community. She's worn a headscarf for 9 years now. She studies the Quran and respects her mother, her brothers and her sisters. And she loves her husband, who admires the work she does.
I am very proud to be married to the daughter of Sheikh Mohammed Salim Dweb. She is a good and well-respected wife. She knows and understands our customs. I am so glad and proud and lucky to be her husband. She is a friendly and honourable woman, and we are a happy family. Our boys, thanks be to God, have all turned out well and are educated. So are our daughters. They studied at university and got married.
The family has prepared a meal in honour of Fatima's friends from Germany. In the meantime, Fatima's mother too has come to terms with the special path her daughter has chosen. So, for her too, times have changed.
Praise be to God, the God of all worlds. Prayer and reverence to the highest of all prophets. I got married very young, when I was 12, and I have had 5 children. May God protect them, and all are healthy and upstanding. They are sheikhs and love the German people because they went to school in Talita. Yes, they love the German people, and so do I, because our girls can speak German. My husband was a famous, outstanding sheikh. He had 2 wives, me and another woman.
Fatima found the strength to overcome all adversities that arose through tradition, through the political and economic situation, and through fate. But wasn't that exactly the same with her father? Has she, the firstborn, inherited his courage, his faith, and his intelligence? She is wise, like her grandmother, whom she admires. Today, for the first time in 27 years, she's allowed to sit in the divan, the men's room, together with her mother, because the camera team from Europe has come.
Neither Fatima nor I would have achieved what we have, of course, had it not been for the support of our husbands. Munir, my husband, and Hassan, Fatima's husband, have given us great backing. And they still do. They think in a way that is open, clear, and humanitarian.
The friendship between Sumaya the Christian and Fatima the Muslim has lasted for 50 years. Despite all unfavourable circumstances, they have continued to meet time and again. Not only in their joint work with young people in Talitha, but here in particular where Fatima has her roots. Over the last few years, Israel's occupation policy has made mutual visits extremely difficult. Today, Palestine is divided up into numerous small prisons that are almost impossible to get out of.
Our friendship, which began in Talita Kumi, embodies the wonderful relationship between Christians and Muslims. We never think of someone as being a Christian or a Muslim. We are all simply human beings who have a God, one and the same God, and we complement one another. We learn from one another. We learn to respect. We learn to accept.
Fatima has experienced how tolerance stems from knowledge. Back in Talitha Kumi, and today in close contact with Sumaya and her friends from Germany. Fatima's respect for a different faith, her acceptance of other ways of life, is based on the fact that she gets to the bottom of things and understands that we have common roots. She has preserved the inquisitiveness and the eagerness to learn she showed as a schoolchild. She often comes here to Herodion and takes an interest in biblical history. But following the discovery of the king's tomb by Israeli archaeologists, Israel's claim to this ruined fortress and to the entire region it has occupied has become even louder. Fatima's mobility has been greatly curtailed. More and more often she waits in vain for Sumaya and lives in the hope that one day the barriers will fall.